I have been guilty of stopping randomly and looking crazy for 5 seconds, taking a photo of a bin, or a container. Or
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Honestly,
do we need an intervention?
No, there's no intervention. This was a basin at a restaurant, and I was like, actually, I was
getting underneath the.
I literally
sink at the
no.
restaurant.
This is above thing on the list I had was temperature, which I think is a really important
You're talking
thing.
colour temperature.
Yeah, definitely.
Not
So
like
like,
it.
yeah, no,
Too hot.
no,
painting
you're
today.
painting too hot. No. Hello everyone, welcome back to Paint Perspective, episode 124. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about painting with deception. Now, a little bit, we're going to go way more into that later in the show, so stick around. Paul, Monday's back.
Good morning.
It's back again.
Good Monday morning.
It's been pretty rushed and pretty busy this morning, but yeah, good to be sitting down chatting about the thing that we all love. Did you get to do much of that this weekend?
Well, no snowboarding, no.
No, that's not snowboarding.
I've never been snowboarding. No, but I did do some painting. Yeah.
Okay,
so,
good.
I did a little bit on Saturday and most of Sunday I spent at the desk.
Okay.
My small desk in front of the window.
Good.
Yeah, getting some paint on.
Good.
Yeah.
Can you talk about it or not?
No.
You can't talk about it. That's a great
Well,
start.
as usual, it could be any one of sort of 3 or 4 models. So it might be for Iron Skull. So.
I'm guessing it's Iron Skull. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, fine. So without revealing too much of what it is, have there been any trials or tribulations so far?
Well, I'm going to say that I was painting green. I wasn't. That's deception. But
Okay.
I don't want to tell you the colours that I'm painting because you might guess what I'm painting. So now I spent quite a long time cleaning this particular model up because this is one of my pitfalls.
Okay.
There's always a mould line somewhere that gets me.
Okay.
So I spent ages doing it. I'm painting. We got it all primed. Beautiful. Gorgeous. All black primed.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. Sat there. Painting on my base green colours, right? Working up to the main, like the mid-tone. And then it just suddenly went, and there's a mould line down one of the legs. I'll just say one of the legs. Still don't know what it is.
Could be anything. Could have 2, could have 4. Yeah, okay.
So this mould line was there and I tried to ignore it. I thought, if I just put another layer on, maybe that'll just go away. It doesn't work like that. So in the end, I thought, I'm just going to have to, if this is a competition piece, I'm going to have to make the effort and remove it.
Yeah.
So the scalpel came back out the drawer. Right.
Was it painful? Not the scalpel, but
it was. Actually, I wasn't too worried about it. Before, it might have been in the past, but I was more worried about leaving an edge. You know, where you scrape paint and you get that hideous edge. You know?
Yeah.
So I was more worried about that than removing the mould line. But I scraped it off. It took literally 3 minutes, and it was all sanded back down. I layered up my green paint on one of the legs. And it was all fine with the world, and I could move on with my life. But other than that, it's quite nice. And then went round it, tidied it up a little bit after that, and I thought that was enough.
Yeah. So disaster averted, basically.
Well, potentially. An award-winning model has been saved so far.
Good.
So,
good.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's all I can say.
A good little early hobby hack, I suppose, for that would be, definitely. You know the Tamiya sanding foam. You can either the display or the Tamiya. I find sometimes if you specifically for like mold lines or legs, if you like cut a tiny slither with a Stanley blade or like some scissors, and you just get some tweezers. Yeah, you can literally really carefully kind of sand between the legs, using tweezers. I had to do that. Or Titus's new model.
Yes,
I put it together, being so keen to put it together. The cape had a huge seam line on the inside of the cape on the left side, so I literally, where the cape arced round, I had to sand with some sanding foam. But doing it with some tweezers, cutting a slither with a display, and just literally just
I think you give me some little pack of.
They're so good.
Yeah, I just cut a little small sliver in the end and just sort of use that. But yeah, no, disaster averted. You wouldn't even know now. You wouldn't be able to even tell.
On one,
there might be mould lines elsewhere on it, but that one's definitely gone.
Tune in next week to find out if there's more. Yeah. No, good.
Yeah, what about you?
I did. I can't. Much like you, it's fitting for the topic of this week, deception. I have been painting something that will actually be revealed tonight at 6 p.m. But we'll say a little bit more about that. Yeah. But no, I have been painting something. So let's just say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If you know what I love painting, right, you'll know what I've been painting. Basically, it's something that comes
Fruits.
from fruits. Yeah, no,
Vegetables?
No, definitely not vegetables. Comes from a certain
Isaac Newton.
No, comes from a certain planet beginning with B. But we won't say any more for the minute.
Pluto.
Yeah. So, no, definitely not.
Okay.
No, but I've been painting a single model that I've been painting, trying to do something a little bit different. I don't paint a lot of these. I haven't painted a lot of these.
Ultramarines. You're painting an ultramarine?
No, definitely not. You'll see. All I can say is tonight, and we'll go into that. It segues us nicely into a little sort of like pre-announcement. You might want to tune in to our YouTube channel tonight at 6 p.m. if you're watching this. There is something going up on the channel which you may like, and that's all I will say. That's all I'll say at the minute. Yeah. Featuring what I was painting before I get cut off. Before I get cut off. So before we go into the main topic, we mentioned on other episodes that previous episode we're going to start giving away the swathe of White Dwarf's spares or dupes that we've got.
Save it from the shredder.
Saved them from Sally the shredder in the office. Yeah, so Paul's not going to be shredding away. And we've got a really cool one this week as the first one. We have White Dwarf number 282, which is actually the Eye of Terror campaign White Dwarf. So it's got some really awesome features in it. Lots of stuff about the Eye of Terror. Great bit of artwork on the front, and it's got 13th Company in it. It's got quite a few really cool things in it. So bit about Battlefleet Gothic, if you like Battlefleet Gothic. So it's got quite a few different Battlefleet Gothic. It's got some really cool stuff about sort of like making your own terrain and stuff, and just a really cool White Dwarf. So if you want to get your hands on this, all you need to do is comment on this episode, and we'll pick one and we'll get this sent out to you. So topic for this week. If you saw the thumbnail and you wondered what the hell are these guys on, then I really wanted to do a topic about sort of like adding interest to models and making stuff readable. I think we're as miniature painters, I always say about your job as a painter is an illusionist, or kind of like if you're painting a model, kind of like deceiving the eye to make them believe that it's not a plastic model. And I really wanted to break down this a little bit more, because I think there's lots of things that we can like extrapolate from this that I think will help a lot of people with their painting and really kind of make the painting process hopefully a bit more linear and hopefully a bit more enjoyable as well. And there's something that I think, and we'll talk about it a bit more in the section, but I think there's something that we're all like a little bit guilty of, having busy lives and not really looking at stuff and taking a second to go, cool, okay, how can I use that for my painting? And that's kind of where the thought process for this week's episode came from. And I think really kind of like what I mean by that is predominantly is miniature painting is an illusion. Really, to start off with, you have a plastic model that you build it, you know whether you convert it or whether you do all those kind of things. You have a plastic model that then you've got to start painting it to emulate different things like hair, material, armor, wood, leather, flesh, all those kind of things, and that's
gems.
And gems and glass, all these different things that we try and kind of like. I mean, you can do that with like different things as well, but just really kind of like trick the eye, and that's kind of like where the whole thing for deception came from. My idea for the episode was I wanted to talk about these things in a bit more detail and help people ultimately to try and trick the eye of people looking at their models to hopefully make them better. That's kind of
tricking myself that I can paint something in the first place.
I mean that is a great start.
You can do it.
That is a great start.
What do you mean? Just like painting a leather belt, just paint it brown.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Again, when we're painting, you look at a model and you'll see all the details that are on it. And I think sometimes like looking at those details and going, oh, it's leather belt, so I'll paint it brown, or it's a bit of cloth, I'll paint it this, or it's skin, I'll paint it like. I think that's one of the things that it's very easy to kind of like pick the color, put that on the model, and then almost like maybe you wash it or shade it or tone it and then highlight it. But other than that, it doesn't really go any further to kind of like deceive the eye of the person looking at it and make them go.
But doesn't that depend on what you're painting it for?
It does. I think purpose.
Like why you're painting it.
Yeah, but I think purpose very much determines the end quality and then execution. But I do think as well, like with very minimal steps, even if you're just highlighting it, you can highlight it in a way that's still highlighting, but it's highlighting like on leather, the wear or the damage that leather's had, for example, and it's still still highlights it, and you can still do like an edge highlighted style if you want to, or you can still do a more painterly style, or whatever. But I think doing that little extra bit to kind of make that person look at it and go, wow, that belt really looks like leather, or that cloth, or that wood, the deck boards that pirate is standing on really look like wood, or things like that. I think that's a really, really good way to kind of add another level of immersion into the miniature. And that's kind of like the whole kind of thing that I was thinking about for this episode, was basically just go into a lot more detail about ways to do it, the steps to make it basically easier for you as a painter to kind of start correlating things to your miniatures, which I'll talk about a bit more. And I think that the last thing as well is also scale as well. Like I think when you're painting, again, we're going to pull leather up as an example, but like when you're painting leather, if you look at like weathered leather and things like that, all the little marks and things on there, they're very tiny, very refined, very detailed. And obviously if you've treated your belt or your coat like rubbish or whatever, you maybe have huge scuffs and scrapes on it, whatever. But general wear and tear has a real subtle kind of patina to it, has a real kind of subtle kind of look to it. And that was kind of my thought process, was like what I wanted to do with the episode is talk about the illusion of deceiving the eye with your miniature painting. Maybe if you're quite new to miniature painting, it's kind of like the next step to get like a higher quality for your miniatures, to kind of trick people's eyes and make them go, cool, okay, it's not a plastic model, you've painted this, or whatever the case may be. And really kind of like the push to kind of like the difference between painting an object and actually painting the idea of like the material. Because all these miniatures are made of different materials and made of different things. And that was kind of my thought process.
Well, they're sculpted as that.
Yeah, they're sculpted.
So do you think this is more geared towards people that are not necessarily just painting models because they want them for the tabletop, but for more sort of higher end painting?
I think if you're a painter,
sort of gearing yourself up towards display and
potentially, but I think whether you're quite a new painter or whether you're quite an established painter or you've been painting a long, long time, I think like you're always trying to trick the eye. I say you're always trying to, like as a new painter, you're just trying to get to ropes with like getting the paint on and getting the right colours on things, getting the mold lines off and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that like people will do want to kind of progress their painting and push their painting. And
I think it's quite a natural thing to want to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think if you're into painting,
if you enjoy it,
if you're into it, if you're not, you're probably playing with grey models, or you're maybe just putting a one colour on the models or whatever. But like I think if you're watching this show, or if you are interested in painting and like you do want to push, I think that like this is a really good like next step to kind of push your painting is start adding that realism of material onto miniatures. I think that's a really good way. Irrelevant of refinement of execution, I think just trying to trick the eye is the really good way to do that. And I think that moves us kind of nicely onto kind of like the next kind of part that I want to go into, which is kind of like the sort of problems that maybe some painters do have with kind of like with doing that. And I think one of the things to start off with is, I've been very guilty of it in my past, whereby I would look at an image or look at something I see on social media, or look at a box art model, or look at this kind of stuff and try and emulate it and copy it exactly the same. And I think that's good to a point, and it gets you to a point whereby maybe it develops a bit of skill with accuracy or color placement or smoothness, or or how neat you are, for example. But then I think that you sometimes, I think for a very long period of my early painting, I stuck within those confines. Yeah. And I was in a real position of innocent ignorance, where I was like, I'm just painting it like this. I could see here, or I see this, or my friend, whoever has painted it like this, and I've just copied the same way that they've painted. Yeah. And I've not really had the opportunity to kind of step back and go, cool, okay, well, I'm painting a coat. It's on a pirate. He wouldn't have a brand new coat, but it looks like it's just solid green, and there's no like interest on it at all whatsoever.
I think, but partly doing that, once you've sort of emulated someone else's work, that then gives you a bit of a mindset on how you can adapt it and
definitely
progress yourself to change things. I have found it quite actually beneficial to look at other people's work and think, especially things like OSL or for glaze, all sorts of different things, and to have it, like try and copy it, because then for myself it's almost like a process of trying to break down what that person's done without actually knowing what they've done, trying to figure these things out. Yeah, which is quite cool, which is quite good, because then you're sort of going through the process yourself and maybe getting a better understanding of the tools that you've got and trying to get this technique from nothing, basically, just an image.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Doesn't that I suppose a lot of painters, I mean, it's a good reference is to look at old oil paintings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but when you look at those, you're then doing the same thing again. You're sort of looking at that and trying to break down
how they've
what
done
they've
it.
done, you know.
Yeah.
And,
I think the moment I started going, right, okay, this guy's got this material, or if they're standing on like a wooden deck, or they've got standing on a bit of metal, or they're wearing this kind of thing, and actually thinking about the thing that I'm trying to paint and how, and we'll move on to real life stuff in a bit. That's kind of the next section I want to get into. But like, I think when I started separating painting what I saw and painting what I saw on other miniatures and painting what I saw in magazines or other people's painting, and then painting stuff basically how I would see stuff in real life, or I would basically see what I thought that material, what I know that material to be. I started to see a better jump in my painting and a better ability with my painting, because that's and it's the same with following recipes. Like, you know, there's various painting books and painting stuff, and there's YouTube videos as well. You can obviously watch YouTube videos, but like that doesn't really, I don't think that really nods hard to you're learning how to paint something, or you're trying to paint something, and if you're following the same recipe, it's like I suppose if you follow, I don't know, one of Gordon Ramsay's recipes, that doesn't mean you're going to make it the same as Gordon Ramsay. Does that make sense? It's like
I have a better chance though at following his recipe.
Yeah, true. I guess so. Yeah.
So, but then again, like I just said, if you can follow someone's recipe, you find out what works, and then adapt, you know, go from there. It's a good starting point.
At least you won't get called a sandwich or something like that. Maybe there is that. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to kind of go into a bit of detail about in that. I think that the opening was like really kind of like going into a bit more detail specifically about like materials and those kind of things, and kind of like the whole thing of miniature painting being this illusion of the eye. It's you're tricking and deceiving the eye to make someone go, cool, that's not a plastic model, and it is this thing. If you're really into painting, I think that's a really good way of kind of like blanketing the approach to how you would try and put paint on the model, or what you were trying to do with paint. And I think that leads really nicely onto the main sort of area of this, which I think is what are ways that you can really, really extrapolate from your surroundings and environment and then convey that onto your miniatures. And that is real life reference.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
It is quintessentially one of the most important things to be aware of. And I said it earlier, like I was very guilty for a long time of being innocently ignorant of my surroundings. We had a busy life. I was ex-recruitment consultant or recruitment consultant. I was doing all this, or even when I was painting early before, like working like many hours a week, obviously in recruitment, like when I played bands and music and all that stuff, I'd done a bit of painting. Like I just paint, not really focus on like the stuff. And you'd end up with models that, you were happy with, but like there was always this missing link that was like, well, why doesn't it look how I want it to look?
But then again, I don't know. I mean, obviously if you see something out in the wild that you think, oh, that would be a good reference, you take your picture, obviously.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that.
What I'd just like to say is, if you're looking at someone else's work, which is a picture, and then you've got your picture on a phone of a real object, you're still in this position of, how do I put either of those things onto the surface I'm painting? Yeah,
100%. But the one thing I'd say to you, and I'm sorry just about real life reference and taking your phone. So unless you are rocking a 3310 and playing Snake still, which some of you may well be. Fair play. You get extra brownie points. Unless you're doing that, we now have an amazing era whereby there's modern phone technology. You're literally carrying like a crazy ability to just take photos of everything you see around you, and really, like as I said for me earlier, remove that kind of like those blinkers of busy life and to start taking photos of stuff. Like if you love the hobby and want to take it further, the Siege Studios shop is your one-stop destination for everything miniature painting and wargaming. From exclusive merchandise and premium dice to expertly painted miniatures, tuition, classes and tickets to events like Iron Skull, there's something here for every kind of hobbyist. You can also pick up the Siege Studios Painting Journal, designed to help you keep track of your projects and techniques as you grow and develop your painting. Whether you're looking for personal personal tuition, painted miniatures, ready for your army, themed merchandise, or access to major hobby events, the Siege Studios shop has everything you need to support and enhance your miniature painting journey. Take the next step in your hobby, explore the full range of products and services, and discover what is available at siegestudios.co.uk/shop. I have been guilty of stopping randomly and looking crazy for 5 seconds, taking a photo of a bin, or a container. Or
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Honestly,
do we need an intervention?
No, there's no intervention needed. I promise you. But like, I mean it sincerely. Like, if I'll never forget one of the first classes I done where we done weathering.
Just to interrupt you there, you're taking a picture of a plastic bin, so you can paint your plastic models to look like plastic.
If a plastic bin is rusting, then fair play. But like, if it's like an old metal bin,
makes more sense.
or like in general, like there are so many things out there that you will. When you start actually thinking about your painting while you're out and about, rather than you walk into wherever you're going to work, or you're on the train, or you're at a station, or you're in a car park, or you go whatever, there are so many opportunities for you to take a photo of something. And I think what it leads back to is like one of the very first classes we done weathering. There were some yellow bollards in the car park, and when we started talking about real life reference and how to start documenting it, in the car park of this venue, I think on the lunch break, all the students were literally around this bollard in the car park, this yellow rusty bollard, taking photos of it. And I wish I could take just to show. It's like people documenting this, like this reference live in the real world. And I think that really helps with your miniature painting. So you said about like, just copying. If you've got a photo of someone's miniature and you've got a photo, I think the reason why real life reference, personally, in my opinion, works better is because people's eyes are more attuned to seeing that out and about in the wild a lot more, if you follow me.
Yeah.
And if you paint not 60% close to the rusty bollard, the yellow bollard on a base, and you get it as close as that, I think that correlation of real life object that you see all the time that's rusty to the bit of rust that you're putting on the model, it has a closer link than going, John's photo, and I'm just going to copy John's photo onto the model. Do you follow me?
I just had this, it's taking pictures of real world. I like to paint Nurgle quite often.
Yeah.
And then the crazy thought of asking people that have got boils if I could perhaps take a picture.
No. Like Google Images is also a really good place for you to get reference images and stuff like that. You can start obviously doing Google searches for images of like wounds and like rash, or like
be careful of that.
But what I would say is that generally speaking, like, you should really leverage real life reference as possible. I've been out, and I said I will put some photos up. I've literally put some of my photos from my reference gallery on. They're going to flash up on the screen. And I wanted to run through them all because I wanted to just talk about like some of the things that I've seen. Like the first one, for example, is this. I was at a meeting. And we often hear about like non-metallic metal, how to do it. And like, I think like, there are so many metallic objects in and around you of different volumes or shapes, so sphere, cylinder, cube, that you can just grab a photo of, and next time you're painting the leg of a marine in silver armor, or you're painting like a flask that Acadian sergeants hold, or whatever, just by having that photo that you've documented in real life, if you try and copy that closer than just painting it silver or putting a wash over it or whatever, or if you're trying to do non-metallics, you're painting it grey and then putting a couple of different colour greys and some darker. If you then start looking at how that reference image that you've got, if you try and paint what you see in that will give you a much, depending obviously the light source, that will still give you a much closer correlation to a real object than just you thinking, I'm going to paint that like that using those colours. I think that will get you a lot closer to the actual result of what you're hoping to achieve on the miniature. And again, like for me, I was in a meeting, I got the phone out and I literally just went, I'm just going to take a photo of that. And like it happens all the time. I think the moment you're conscious about documenting things that you see that could be interesting for your painting, you end up with this amazing gallery on your phone of all these things. Like next time I want to paint this, you can have a flip through your gallery, go through the photos. I've got something that's very similar to that. That will really, and that will give you, in my opinion, a much better starting point or trampoline than just thinking, I'm going to paint a metal flask. How do I paint it? I want to do non-metallic metal. How do I paint it? Like, and then just it's such a better thing. And I think the other sort of like silver lining of starting to document your own reference is that your eye then becomes more accustomed and tuned in itself to these things that are out in the wild. That means you're almost like training that language of finish, material, how it behaves, how light interacts with it. You're training your eye a lot more because you're conscious of it while you're looking at it.
Is it like trying to train your brain to be a bit more the way that an actual artist would look at something?
I think so, yeah.
Just like a model maker.
Well, the thing is, an artist or painter, if you go to museums and you go to galleries, that they're obviously painting on a flat bit of canvas.
Yeah.
So they're not only trying to convey material, they're also trying to convey like shape and depth of field and all that kind of stuff as well. And
like double deception, because they're trying to deceive you for the material and the object.
100%, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that like I really, really wanted to talk about this week is like it's about really starting to think about your miniature painting a lot more in that way. So I think that when you do. For especially again, where I know we're on the subject of reference at the minute, I think that is one of and that correlates to so many different aspects of things that you would paint. So I've obviously got this picture of a flask that was the first thing I picked up. I was at this is the next photo. I was at a restaurant with Mother Half at the time, and literally I saw this vial on the other side of the restaurant, and it had this amazing, beautiful red like highlight down it from where one of the red lights in the restaurant was shining on it, and it had a secondary which is like the lighter line on it. And again, like if I imagine that's like a custodian's leg, and like you've got like the red glimmer of the tabard between the legs on the inside, like stuff like that just really helps show how color like wraps and works on different materials, and how like metal as an object kind of absorbs the colors and tones and things around it. It just adds a lot of interest to the object. And like if I was painting a model, or if I was painting, I don't know, a character, and they holding something metallic, and they had like a red thing here and like that, I think it would be a lot harder for me to decide where I would position colors, or how that color, the reflection would work on that object without something visual. Yeah. And this is why capturing that moment in time for me, whenever I'm thinking, I need to know how to paint that, rather than just thinking about it, or just. You can Google image of stuff like that, but rather than doing that,
you could dress up.
I mean, that's going a bit far.
You could actually literally have something metal, and then just get someone to take the picture.
I mean, you could do that. That's like that's even hard. When you become your reference, I think you've kind of like leveled up. But my whole goal with this was like just to really kind of like talk about like capturing reference as much as possible. And I know I made the joke about the 3310 and Snake and all that kind of stuff, but like I think it's really important as a painter to start taking that hugely into consideration. And it's not just, obviously I'm talking about metal, but it's not just that. Like we have all other things obviously that we've got, damage and rust, for example. Like that's literally here in Wickford where we are, and that's literally a bollard in the high street.
What a lovely bollard that is.
It's got this huge streak down it, but it just shows like, again, if I've got stuff like that on my phone that I'm carrying with me all the time, you'll look strange for 5 seconds taking a photo of that bollard in the middle of the high street or that whatever. Obviously, take photos of things you're allowed to take photos. Don't be going places you shouldn't be. But the point being is that like I really would recommend like you do build your own library on your phone. Because I think that it will hugely be rewarding to you. And you're doing two things. You're building that library of reference, of your own reference that you can then look at when you're painting. But also I see it a bit like training your eye. Yeah. You're training your eye to kind of like get used to seeing certain things on different materials and how they behave, the colors, the tones, the shapes, the way light interplays with them, all that kind of stuff, which ultimately when you then put that onto the model, if you're training your eye and training your way of executing and doing stuff that's more relative to how it actually is, I think that that's going to all lead to you producing models that ultimately you're going to be more happy with, that you're then going to look at and go, cool, that does look like leather, that does look like material, that does look like all those things, but yeah, you really should start, taking photos. And another thing is obviously like verdigris. Verdigris is like this amazing thing that happens obviously on certain metals.
Copper and things like that.
This was
green, doesn't it?
This one was a basin, a pipe work.
You're supposed to be fixing it.
No, I wasn't fixing it. There was no DIY going on. Yeah. You've seen my cutting and you know what that's like. Yeah, but like, this was a basin at like a restaurant, And I was like, actually, I was
getting underneath the
I literally,
sink at the
no,
restaurant.
this is above. There was like the pipe work above the basin, you know, and
what's he doing?
Like 2 seconds, I literally saw it. Saw it, and I was like, the colours and tones on it were amazing, and like I literally took a photo of it.
Yeah.
Again, I looked strange. Obviously, it was no about. You look strange for a couple of seconds taking a photo, but like it really helps to like make things seem more believable. And like I obviously again, we've got a picture of like this amazing lion. I'll put that up on the screen now so you can see.
That's really gone, isn't it, that one?
But like, there's plenty of opportunities to start doing this while you're painting and while you're traveling around or while you're doing stuff. And I think the moment you remove the blinkers of busyness in your life and you start thinking about this stuff, like we're all passionate about miniature painting, and like capturing great reference as a trampoline is like integral.
I'll tell you what, look, for the most part, I mean, speaking for myself and maybe some other painters out there, we don't tend to draw from like natural things around us. I know from myself, when I'm painting, I use the source material, which is the GW website.
Yeah.
I've got a 360. I'll just whiz that around, and then because I'm basically copying, aren't I? I'm just copying one for one, at least at sort of my level anyway. I'm just copying one for one. I will sometimes look at reference, but it's maybe it's not to this sort of level just yet. I'm still gearing myself up to.
I don't know.
Still working on it.
I don't know. Like you say about copying, like again, going back on it, like the copying is all well and good and it's fine. I think this is more like a garnish on top of something.
Yeah.
Like you've still got to be like a great painter, and you've still got to be accurate, neat, all these kind of things. You've still got to have all the ability to copying is in itself a hard thing. And what this will do for you when it comes to your miniature painting is what it will do is it will start adding on top of that core skill that you develop as a painter. You've done it with your Nurgle model you painted recently. Like you've done loads of weathering off of there. You've done loads of like toning of cloth or like the skin or those kind of things. And like that's just adding that layer of extra information and readability onto the model.
Yeah.
And what I'm basically getting at with the way we're talking about reference this week is essentially, and obviously like how it correlates to your painting, is to basically make what you do not only better by being more readable, but also sell and immerse that person in them believing that it isn't this plastic. You know, it's a plastic model. We all know it's a plastic model.
The other question I have, right, which I think is quite important. Obviously, you're going for this level of realism.
Yeah.
At what distance from the viewer does this?
Great question.
Because this is my thing. I think, well, at 3 feet where you've got them on the tabletop, where most of our miniatures end up.
Yep.
Most of the time, they look great. You know, you think, oh, well, I can see what's on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, for displaying competition models, you're looking at about 2 inches away from your face to really get that. You're trying to look at the most minute details on these things. So, I mean, how do you like? When's the cutoff point? It's like
that's a great question.
Have you got to decide that for yourself, sort of first?
I think so. Yeah. I think you do. I think. Obviously, if you're painting more of your characters, or if you're painting, if you are trying to push your overall force, and don't forget that this thing, like, just to segue slightly, I know we'll go into it, but like this, adding this realism or adding this kind of level of like interest onto models, I mentioned it being like a garnish, is very much something that I think that you can do after the fact.
Yeah.
So you can base coat your models, build them, clean them, undercoat them, paint them, all the base coat them models, and you can play them on the table. You can wash them and highlight them. But then adding this interest on is always something that can be added on after the fact.
There's a little bit of that.
A little bit salt bay, a little bit salt bay on your models, which I think is everything. So like you're saying about cloth and stuff, like if you are collecting Nurgle, you can do all the work on them. You can paint them all. If you're painting like Guard or you paint whatever, you can paint them to that standard that you're happy with for gaming. But then like, let's just say you do have some more time to kill. You can then go in and start adding those real little bits of interest.
Boyle reference images.
There you go. Yeah.
I've got the pus on that one.
Yeah. But what I mean about like references, to say this hopefully in a bit of a jokey way, is that what I'm trying to get at is that you basically need to become like the painting paparazzi.
Right.
That's kind of what you need to do. Like when you're out and about, when you see stuff, and I made a joke about the Nokia 3310, but like you've got this amazing tool in the smartphone. If you use one or got one, and like you should be documenting stuff. It is so important to your painting, in my opinion. Like,
that'd be a bad idea actually. like you practice painting, like not say you're not painting any miniatures, but you can obviously practice your painting on different, bits of sprue and plastic or whatever you've got laying around. You've got one of these reference images, especially like for the non-metallic and stuff, which is probably what I would try and practice at. Try and obviously use the reference image to go onto this little piece of plastic.
Yeah.
And practice on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can do.
I
I mean, you can get any. Like I said, you can do bits of sprue are great. Like spare bits of plastic art, they're great. Like ultimately, it's about putting something on there that resembles the object or material we're trying to emulate, and that way it conveys the feel of it and what it looks like. I think an area that I really wanted to kind of like extrapolate onto is obviously like understanding reference and using reference is both great for beginners and people that are more advanced. Like it's not something that like only advanced painters would do. Irrelevant of like the quality of the and the refinement of like attempting to put texture, or if you're trying to paint wood like a grain or like on this table, or like irrelevant of how well you do it, doing it still helps trick the eye. It still counts.
It still counts, right?
It still counts. 100% does.
Counts,
It still counts, and it still attempts to make that person look at it and go, "Oh, you've not just painted it brown because it's wood, or you've not painted it this because it's this," or it helps that level of immersion that you're trying to ultimately build on the model and convey the story of that material. And don't forget that like cloth can be new, it can be old, it can be dirty, it can be clean. There's so many like different avenues that you can have fun with when you're painting. It's like I always find that like trying to trick the eye and trying to make people believe the stuff that's closer to the actual inherent material is a real fun game. It's like the game part of painting, in my opinion. Like it's making someone look at it and not only go, yeah, they've painted it well or they've painted it good, but what they've done is they've also tried to understand that like this is something completely different to this and push things away from each other, which I think is really, really important. So I think that leads on to like how to simplify stuff. And I think I always think that if you try and copy what you see as close as physically possible, irrelevant of your ability, I think that's going to do a better job for you as a painter than just painting it that solid color as I mentioned. And I think through the visual muscle memory of looking at stuff and learning it and looking at stuff and going, cool, okay, well I can see that this metal, this bollard has got like these chips and they're this kind of shape, and like especially when it comes to like weathering, for example, I always say that like weathering scalar is obviously important, but at the same time like how sharp, jagged, angular, aggressive it looks. Weathering on a material or object, I see people do weathering and sometimes it's very, very round and soft and smooth looking, and that doesn't convey how that damage or wear would necessarily be on the piece. Does that make on the object? So through looking at stuff, taking photos of it, and really kind of like filling your visual memory with like, this is what weathering looks like, this is what weathering looks like, getting the habit of taking those photos and collecting all that stuff, that'll actually translate to when you're painting it, going, it needs to be sharper, it's not sharp.
That's all. I mean, with the whole weathering thing, I mean, that's most of us just want a bit of sponge, just dab it on and get it finished. But this is a bit more refined and probably doing it by hand a lot more.
I mean, I think you say that, but I think it's an amalgamation of two things. Like, so you have a very subtle patina. Like we've taken weathering on metal, for example. So if I was going to weather some metal, it's an old bit, say it's the side of a tank or something like that, you would have, it drives along, little bits of like grit and sputter against the paintwork. You're going to have tiny little chips. And now you can sit there with a brush and do all these tiny, tiny, tiny little subtle dots of like a highlight color or something like that. But that's where like, I think I've always thought that like with again, trying to use real life reference and try and trick the eye, that you're trying to create various mediums of damage on that surface. You're trying to create like the subtlety of like spray of dirt or grit or whatever. You've got impacts from projectile weaponry or burns or all this kind of stuff. So you've got different layers or different levels of kind of like wear that you will add onto that piece. And you're only going to visually really see that by looking at it all the time and looking at stuff that is in that way. So like for me, I would get a sponge and I would like sponge on the model first, for example, really softly and gently, just to add little subtle, tiny little marks. I could sit there with a brush and do all those individual little dots and go dot, 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 dot till the end of time. But the sponge...
If you're dedicated,
if you are dedicated, but the sponge doesn't sacrifice the quality, as in if I'm delicate with a sponge, I can put those little dots on. It creates a more natural and randomized pattern, which again... as humans, we try to be quite regimented in what we do. So what can actually happen when you're doing the brush is that you go dot, 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 and it's all very similar. Whereas the sponge will obviously do that a bit more subtle. Once you've done that, then you can go in with with a brush and start looking at your reference and go, cool, well, look, on this corner, typically this corner has a bit more wear on it because it's on a corner, it catches stuff more, whatever. Yeah. I'll put some bigger ones there, and then you can start working that. So it's about marrying what you see in the reference to the shape that you're painting, and then thinking of all the different layers of like potentially what damage or wear has occurred on the object. Yeah, and this is all hypothetical based on the scenario. If you've got a brand new tank, it's probably not going to have that, but like if it's been through various campaigns, you're probably gonna have a lot more weathering and damage actually on the object as well. So it's taking that into consideration. I think some of the things that really like help as a painter is like, if irrelevant of whether you've done it to the best of your ability or not, when you do stuff like that, it's always a learning process. And then you look at it and go, cool, I went maybe a bit heavy with the sponge. Maybe rather than it being a green side of a tank, I've then made it a light green because I've hammered so much sponge on it, whatever. I think that in itself, and this is where like marrying as close to a bit of, if you find something you like, let's just say I like tanks a lot, so I go to like Bovington quite a bit. I go to like tank museums and stuff like that, and armor museums, and like and they're a great environment. Like if they're like if you're the painting paparazzi, like a museum like that is like the best environment ever,
I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to get us out from underneath the painting table and looking at Google and actually going outside.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's not just it's about keeping.
I told you before, we fear change.
Yeah, no, but I really mean it. Like when I've gone to those museums, I'll put a couple pictures of tanks and stuff, like the shells, even in the cabinets, the way that the light hits on the shell casings is great for non-metallic reference and brass reference, all that kind of stuff. Galleries are great, and you mentioned galleries, and they are. I'll tell you this and I mean this seriously. When I go to paint museums and stuff, as much as looking at the paintings are great, and they're great for reference on a 2D surface, I'm photographing the floor. I'm photographing there's typically marble floors
in pile of bricks that's 20 grand.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the pile of. I'm typically photographing the floor. These are photos from my reference folder on my phone that we'll put up. But I've got photos of marble floors. I went to a church somewhere, and there's a church that's amazing for like reference of like concrete, stone. Like if you're doing, but even for basing, if you're trying to do bases, like looking at stuff that's like in a church or in those kind of environments is really good. Like if you're doing marble floors, if you're doing those kind of things, there's so many things that you suddenly start looking at and being more immersed into, just when you've got this mind of like, I'm collecting reference. And Google Images always help you, don't get me wrong, but I think if you see something that's interesting to you, and you go, oh, do you know what? I'd love to paint. I'd love to do, I'm collecting custodian guard, and I want to do like a marble floor that contrasts really good. And you're going around a museum or you're going around a church and they've got like a dark, deep green emerald marble on the floor.
Take a picture of it.
Capturing it in that moment, is, I think, so more useful for you as a painter and helpful for that thing that you want to do. It means you can just get back to your desk and go, cool, like I can see how all the vein work is. I can see all the different colours of tone. And if it's your photo as well, I know lighting in the environment will also affect the colours and things. But if you're doing that, I think that you'll have a bit more of an emotive connection to it as well, which I think, rather than just grabbing a picture off of Google, if you've taken the photo and you've invested the interest in taking that photo, I think that you have a bit more of an emotive connection to that reference, which then hopefully will mean that when you try and paint it, you feel a bit more. So
I'm still in the predicament of, I've got the picture, I now need to use my paintbrush to try and replicate that somehow.
But this is the thing: it's like it's paint what you see. Like remove the fear or the worry of like making the mistake. If you just focus on painting what you see in that image, because you're copying, but you're, rather than copying someone's miniature painting or copying the box art or copying this, you're copying a real reference.
Right, gotcha.
And if you copy that as close as you can to that, the law of averages should hopefully mean that on the model, it looks more like the thing you're trying to copy than just something you've seen on the.
Although it's funny because my brain keeps going back to that. I think quite a number of years ago, there was. I can't remember which artist did it, but there was in one of the White Dwarfs, there was I think it was a Chaos Army.
Yeah.
And there was a Minotaur, and he was holding a banner, and the banner has got the Mona Lisa painted on it.
Yeah, I know. I remember that is in a White Dwarf magazine.
That is, yeah.
Whether it's, I don't know if it's. I can't remember what it was. I know that someone's done it. Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that was funny. Like, you know, he's literally used a real reference and just copy that. So that's. But I thought that was quite funny. Like, you don't see that anymore.
No,
people aren't doing that anymore.
No,
but
it's a real good way of hopefully for new painters or painters that maybe, you know, really want to improve their models. And I think there's a big disconnect between, you know, okay, I'm going to paint metallic on the surface, metal thing on an object. So whether you're doing non-metallics or whether you're doing true metallics, I think both are great in their own way of execution. But I think that, like, yeah, we've all been guilty of getting metallic paint, putting it on the model, washing it with a dark colour, and then just a bit of edge highlighting on it. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever. Yeah. However, if you want to add interest onto your metallics, instinctive, without looking at metal and going, cool, how does metal tone, or how do things affect it, or, like, you know, how does it wear? Like, what you know, I think that when you start looking at the reference and then trying to put that onto the model, you'll notice that metal damages in a certain way when it gets scratched, or when it doesn't have certain shapes and certain things on it. Typically, it always tends to wear in a certain way. So when you then try and paint, you're kind of like then teaching yourself, well, visually, I'm not going to paint shapes like that on the model, because I know that on real metal, when it wears or when it damages, those shapes, they wouldn't be present. It would be more like this. So what that will inherently do is then you look at it and go, that actually looks like real weathered metal, because you've gone, cool, okay, you've linked the dots, so to speak, between the real life and your miniature.
I think partly the problem is as well, for like everyday references and things like that. The problem with everyday references, you see it every day. So you don't act. I mean, you see it, but you don't really, because you walk past stuff every day, don't you? It's just part of everyday life.
We're so guilty of it.
My brain doesn't automatically think, "Oh, that's a lovely bit of rust. I'll take a picture of that."
Yeah.
But I suppose it's perhaps just trying to rewire yourself a little bit.
Honestly, I saw
if I see something, doesn't matter that I look a bit weird taking a picture of a puddle or whatever it is. Just do it.
You will look odd. You will look odd for 5 seconds taking that photo of that railing or that bit of metal or that whatever. You'll look crazy taking a photo of it. All right, okay. And obviously, when I'm saying taking photos, I mean this. Do it in places that you're allowed to take photos. Okay, all right, okay. But what I really mean is, like, taking that. We're all super, 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 super busy with life. All right. Okay. I get that. You know, kids, family, work, all these different things. But if you're really passionate about your painting, I think that, like, developing your own, almost like your own gallery of stuff that you find interesting, that you think, you know what, like, that would look really good if I tried to paint that on a miniature. And you'll be so surprised. I mean, like, just to nod to it again, like rust. The stereotypical thing is, like, rust is orange or brown. Yeah. The moment you start looking at, like, containers that are rusty, and you start seeing that, like, the paint affects the pigment in the paint can affect rust, and it can have different tones and colors in it as well. I think that's something that, like, I only really learned that through looking at stuff rather than just going, oh, I'm going to paint rust. Oh, it's brown, it's orange, you know, all that kind of stuff.
You know what I'm like with rust? It comes in a bottle. It just comes in a bottle. And it's already done for me.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. I just wanted to say this, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, using products that are generated and created to do a certain task or job. But I think what I'm trying to get at with reference and this whole topic of deception and like making the eye of the person reading the model really believe what it is you're painting, I think the moment I started using reference to do stuff, I actually understood materials and how they interact, which as an individual thing is really benefits your painting. It really helps.
I suppose the one sort of, I mean, if you're painting armor, that's generally a flat surface, and maybe that's easy to convey as something else. But cloths and things, because of the scale, obviously you can't see the weaves and the things, or how finely these things have been woven. So to try and convey that this is actually cloth and not just a really smooth, shiny piece of plastic that's been painted white or yellow or whatever, I think that's quite difficult. Cloth,
you're right, and I'm glad you moved on to cloth, because, like, the first time I actually understood how to like cloth properly was when I looked at real cloth and material.
Well, yeah.
Box art, and, like, I say box art, but within miniature painting, I've always found that even like when I was very young, and like this is pre-break and post-break of miniature painting, I'd be very guilty of like painting the cloth a single color, getting a wash, putting it all over the model, and obviously gravity would then pull the wash or the shade or whatever into the recesses, and the recesses would be dark. It was only when I started really looking at materials and cloth, as in real life reference, like I'll put a picture up of this like lady in a yellow dress. Okay, it's not like the Matrix moment.
As my mind immediately
went
no,
I thought it was good. Yeah, it's not a red dress. But like this is just a photo that I have pulled off of Google. But like but in general, what I was going to say was like, it was only when I started looking at real life reference of material and cloth that I actually then started to visually understand that when you light cloth, it's got nothing to do with the depth or the height of the material, as in how deep it is.
Right.
It's pure and simple, determined that the vibrancy or lighting is purely determined by the angle to the light source. So if the like a lot of the instant thought process would be, well, in the bottom of a recess, it would be dark.
Yeah.
Whereas in fact, because that bottom of the recess is angled like this and it's flat or near to flat, because of that, it's actually bright. The same way that on the top of a fold, it's bright because it's flat to light.
Yeah.
Like the sun is like, don't quote me on the distance, but the sun is X amount of millions.
But it's 1 AU away.
Well, I don't know what it is. If that's that, then I'll go with that. But however far the sun away is, do you really think that like this much distance is going to determine huge difference?
Well, I guess you're right, because obviously if a surface is flat, all the light is bouncing off of that object into your eyeballs. But if it's curved, then a very small portion of the light is bouncing directly into your old papers, and the rest of it's going all over the shop. So
yeah, exactly. So it was only when I started looking at real life reference of material and cloth and actually looking at how light interplays with it. Because obviously clothing, obviously it's a lot of cylinders and stuff, and ultimately like curtains and like crinkles on your sleeve and all this kind of stuff. They are cylinders essentially. That's the shape that they are. And a cylinder will always have obviously like a line highlight on the highest, on the apex or the highest point of like the curve.
Each bit.
And then when I started looking at real life reference of cloth and material, I was then like, well, actually all the shadows are on the parts where light can't come down and wrap under. So all the undersides, which actually are, it's not that they're deep, it's actually the undersides of the parts that then suddenly I started seeing that's where shadows would fall. And where you'd have a recess or in between two peaks, so to speak, it was bright. And the shadows were, and the darker tones were actually on the side left. And it was only when I started looking at real life reference and took off like the blinkers of like busy life.
Yeah.
And started looking at stuff like that I then went, cool, okay.
I suppose the reason we paint that is that the other way where we put it in the shade is so that you can see it from 3 feet away.
Yeah, for contrast. Yeah,
because I mean, you're mostly painting miniatures for playing games with.
Totally, yeah.
And so you're just sort of given a rough.
Yeah, I agree. I think again, this all determines. This is all determined by the purpose of the miniature. We always talk about that. If you're getting your army together to just game with your mates really quickly, and you just want stuff that's instant contrast and looks really, really impactful straight away. There's zero wrong with that. Again, like painting and art is the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, etc. But what I would say is that like when your eye is naturally attuned to seeing cloth behave a certain way in real life, I really found a huge improvement in my painting of cloth when I then started painting cloth on models, how cloth actually is lit.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I don't want to say you're living a lie, but it's almost like you're painting it and you're training your eye to paint cloth and look at cloth the way that cloth actually isn't behaving. So when you then
all the opposite, what you've just learned, forget about it, do the opposite.
So when you what I find when you paint it more like cloth actually looks and the way that actually behaves, it actually makes your model look more realistic to your eye.
Yeah.
And sells that it's cloth more because it is behaving as cloth would behave on the miniature. Does that make sense? Like that it totally changed and totally changed my painting of cloth when I started doing that.
Yeah, I have to have a bit more of a practice at that sort of thing.
All you're doing is shifting the shadows and the positions of shadows to, rather than being in the deep parts, they're just on the parts that would be angled away from light or aren't as flat to light. The moment I done that, I was like, that looks way more like cloth. You know, and you're talking about texture and stuff like that. Now, obviously, individual little stitches. That the scale that we paint the miniatures is obviously, you've got to take scale into consideration totally. But like, even with stippling, once you start learning how like cloth behaves, you can stipple loads of dots. You'll knacker a brush, like completely ruin a brush from doing thousands of dots with it. But you can stipple the fabric so that it follows that real lighting, and then that will emulate it having a bit of a not a texture, but a bit of like a weave or like a pattern, not a pattern, but you know what I mean. It will emulate that way more. And it's only really when you start doing that, I think that, like, again, nodding back to the whole painting to deceive or the deception aspect of it, when you start stacking those things and layering those things, that's where then models start looking way more realistic. You know, because you start doing those things. Like I spoke about it already, but wood grain is another one. Like like whether you're just painting lines on stuff and painting lines and things like that. Because I've done that. There used to be a skirmish game that was all about pirates and stuff like that. I can't remember. And I had painted some pirates for that. And I was like, yeah, it'd be great to put them on a ship and have them on the deck of a ship. You know, it makes perfect sense. You know, and I just painted loads of lines. And then I was really frustrated that those planks and stuff didn't look like. So I've got in my mind, I'm painting wood. I know that wood has grain. I'm just going to paint lines, but I didn't connect to. Well, what does it look like? And
back in the old days when I used to paint Napoleonic figures, obviously you get their rifles and things. They didn't have wood grain actually sculpted onto them because only 25 mil, so they didn't generally have them. So, like to boost that effect, the way we used to do it was to paint the wood yellow first, then paint on your black lines for the wood grain, because you got the black and yellow contrast, and then paint a layer of brown over the top. And that yellow and black would help sort of push through those. I mean, up close it looked pretty shocking, but on the tabletop, I thought, that looks pretty good. Yeah. So you can do it on quite a rudimentary level.
100%. Yeah. Don't forget, like, deception of the eye when it comes to painting is not just about getting it. Like, you're not literally trying to paint a bit of wood. You're not literally trying to paint a bit of metal or a bit of rust. Like, it's even, like, I'll circle back to wood very quickly, but like in a second. But like with rust and stuff like that, or damage or holes and stuff like that, it's the illusion of depth on a surface that has no depth.
I do have to say that often what do we put on our bases? We put sand and stones on our bases, and we paint them to look like
sand and stones. Yeah.
And sometimes, like, especially at the studio, we get models that have got bits of tree on them, and they're actually bits of wood that have been
painted,
cured and painted to look like wood.
Yeah, I know. So, but I've always found that, like, if you just use natural stuff without doing anything to it, it does disconnect slightly. You kind of need.
My stone doesn't look like a stone.
Yeah, I know. It does disconnect. I think it does. Because obviously everything is painted and the stones are not painted. It does have this slight disconnection, which I think is it's just the fact you've got something that's painted and something that's not. But like you're quite right. Like I think that, like, for wood. Again, looking at wood, when I was doing those bases for those pirates, I then actually look, I'm painting wood. I really need to just actually look at what it looks like. Things like the grain, not the grain isn't all perfectly straight. It's got, it has knots in it, and like the way the grain flows around the knot, for example. So I then changed my whole, based on looking at wood, I then changed my whole process. I went, right, well, what I'll do is I'll paint it brown. I'll then paint some darker spots that are some random darker spots that are the eyes or the those knots in the wood, and then my lines will be. I won't be so focused on getting straight lines. I'll be a bit more. They'll still be straight, but they'll have a little bit of play in them and a little bit wavy, and then they'll go round the knots and flow around the knots. And the moment I started doing that and trying to paint like the photos I've seen, I was like, actually, do you know what? That looks way more like wood than me just going line. Yeah. So yeah, it's something that I think helps. Helps massively. The other area I wanted to go into is, like, obviously, like the sort of deception techniques and things that you can do to kind of like trick the eye a lot quicker and a lot easier. And I think, like, obviously edge highlighting is something that, if you're watching this show, you probably you maybe don't know what it is, but obviously edge highlighting is obviously where you edge highlight the areas that would catch light, for example.
Sharpest edges.
Yeah, and that typically, I think, for on like metals and and you don't necessarily have to edge every single edge if you're trying to maybe if you're not painting more in a box art style, but you're painting a bit more sort of like painterly or realistic. There'd only be certain edges that are more prominent or that are higher that would catch light, and some. And I think being comfortable with painting that way and not edging everything is also a skill when you're trying to paint in that language of more realism.
It's okay to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, but it does depend totally on like the painting style. And I think again, it's about marrying to like light source and marrying to where light would be catching or what would actually be hitting. I think that,
and of course, your own painting style. You know, you figure these things out as you go along as well. Like you sort of sit into your own style of things.
Yeah. The next. What if I told you you could easily take the basing of your miniatures to the next level? Well, now you can with the wide range from Siege Scenics. Siege Scenics is dedicated to helping you create immersive and realistic environments for your miniatures that feel alive and dynamic, whether you're setting the scene for tabletop battles or telling a compelling story on a competition piece. From the lush tones of summer grasslands to cold alien landscapes, Siege Scenics has you covered. Our expertly crafted and innovative products capture the ever-changing beauty of nature and let you bring it straight to your miniatures. To explore the full range and elevate your miniature basing, head to siegescenics.co.uk or check with your local retailer. Next thing on the list I had was temperature, which I think is a really important
You're talking
thing.
colour temperature.
Yeah, definitely. So
like
I'm
too hot.
No, painting too hot. No, temperature. So typically shadows can be colder on miniatures and colours or things that you're painting. So like being like experimenting. You've done a lot of underpainting, like we put in different colours and different tones and things and things.
Yeah, but this isn't with any thought. Like this isn't with any sort of really like intense artistic thought. This is me just going, oh, just splashing on colour.
No, you're fine. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever, because I think that experimentation breeds kind of like
what happens.
Yeah, 100%. Like, don't forget that, like, as much as I'm saying about tricking the eye and being real life, like, if you're trying to emulate something as close as possible, then obviously looking at stuff does help you. But if you're just trying to, you know, you're having fun and you're just trying to like be a bit creative and have a bit more artistic flair, and like, you can do stuff like that. That's no issues at all whatsoever. But what I'm trying to say is there's a nice middle ground whereby if you know that you're painting, I don't know, like I don't know, a model, and you want it's at night time, or if it's colder, let's just say it's in the Arctic or something like that, or you want your shadows using colours and tones that are colder in their temperature will help sell the environment and help sell what the model is experiencing. Does that make sense? You know, if you
I have seen lately people trying to paint models as though it's late at night. Yeah, which obviously means like a red space marine doesn't look red. No, it might look more purple or dark blues. So I mean, it's trying to convey that it is still a certain type of thing, but it's in this other environment, which we don't really see a lot of that. But it just looked really cool. I thought that but it kind of glazes the whole model in sort of a few tones rather than
one flat tone.
Yeah.
And I think that also works for like temperature. Also works for like rock as well. I think rock's a really good thing about bases. Like I used to be very guilty of like when I before looking at rocks and looking at stuff and taking photos of stuff and things like that. I used to be very guilty of like painting it grey, putting like a brown wash or something over the top of it, painting it with like maybe like putting some green over it, things like that. But then I've been doing a lot of putting like blues and purple glazes and tints on my stones and rocks and things like that. Typically ceramic objects, I say ceramic, but rock, and they tend to be a cold, unless they're in direct heat and sunlight, they tend to be quite a cold material. Like they don't, unless they're heated up through direct sunlight, as I mentioned, or through sort of like, I don't know, fire.
Like lava bases.
Yeah, or lava and stuff like that. They don't really have like a lot of warmth to them. It's quite a cold material. If you pick up a bit of slate, it's cold. It's cold. It's not, you know. So like working those kind of colours and tones into I'll paint it grey and I'll use some more blues, purples, I'll use those. And I feel that by doing that, not only are you putting an interesting colour on there, you're also adding the temperature or feel that material would have inherently as well. And I think that helps sell the illusion of it being the thing that it is. I'll put up a picture of some again, this is a photo on a beach. So there's a photo here of like, and it just to show you like all the different colors and tones and things, because I used to paint rock and I just used to go flat gray with it. And it's only now that through looking at photos of real rocks and slate and all these different materials that I'd have on bases, that I then start painting colors and tones, and my bases automatically started looking more realistic because I was painting them to look like the real material. And that's what I'm trying to get at by using. You
can always just cover your bases in tufts.
I mean, there is that.
Forget about it.
There is that. If you're playing Blood Bowl, then you don't want too many rocks on the pitch. But
and then there's like this whole thing of painting the white stripes. So you need that right.
Airbrush that on. But yeah, I think one of the things is it's about connecting the visual to like in your mind and brain, like of actually what that thing is. And that is the illusion. That is the deception. That is the thing we're trying to kind of like convey by doing this. It's
just so you can go, oh, look, he's got a leather belt on, or, oh,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
whatever he's got metal pauldrons or whatever.
Exactly. So I think to round out and summarize this, I think like I really wanted to give some practical kind of advice to people that maybe if you haven't taken reference, or maybe if you if it's something maybe you've not even thought of, or maybe you have, but I think things first and foremost is, I know I've said it and I know I joke about it, but becoming a bit of a painting paparazzi is what I would definitely recommend, unless you are rocking a 3310. But like, I definitely think you should be taking photos where you can and where it's allowed, and where you're happy to do so. But I think you should be taking photos of like if you see chevrons on like on like, if you go to an industrial site and you're there to pick up something on the weekend, or any chance you get to take photos of stuff that you see that you're totally fine to do, I think it will massively help your painting and building that reference up. Training your eye and being aware and being observant of your surroundings. Again, we all live busy lives. I've said it already, but like, we all live really, really busy lives. You don't necessarily stop and think, oh, actually, that'd be really that. Trying to be more conscious and be more aware of that, I think that will really help as well, massively for you as a painter. And ultimately, nodding back to the thing is, have as much reference for materials that are things that you paint, that like in your if you paint, there are certain things obviously that you can't, like if you collect Tyranids or if you collect things, thank God they're not real, but like you could you know,
can look at bugs though, can't you?
There's amazing pictures of frogs and lizards, like scorpions.
Just go and lift up a piece of old wood in the forest, there'd be loads of
you'll get loads of reference on those as well. But like, I think they're the things predominantly that I would sort of like focus on, and I think that will really help you to kind of like start doing this deception of miniature painting, which is what I really wanted to talk about this week, and I thought that it would kind of like help hugely. So I really encourage you to put loads of effort into. It's
definitely something. It's definitely an interesting subject, and it's definitely like another branch of miniature painting.
Definitely, yeah.
That, I don't know, we tend to overlook it, but it's not always at the forefront of everyone's mind.
No, because you get super excited by the miniatures, and I think like they are things that like you do. I'm super guilty of it. Like I'll get a new plastic model, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to paint this model. Like, and it'll have something on there maybe I've never painted it before, and your brain does run off. You got this you've got to chase this, this excitement of doing that thing. But I don't really like I think. I always talk about the breath before the drop when you sit at your desk or whatever. But I think taking that breath to go, cool, what's on this model? Like, how can I make it different? How can I explore doing that? How can I do that? Like, I think being more conscious of that will really like translate to much better results
I think I'm getting it as I paint, especially for leathers and things. I'm definitely not just painting a flat brown leather with an edge highlight on it anymore. I tend to swerve way more on like a weathered leather look with lots of little marks and things all over it. I don't know whether in my brain that's just because I want it to look more realistic, but just aesthetically it looks better that way. Model. So I'll paint it that way. That's just my sort of personal preference now, I guess. So that's like, you got your recipe for that, and that's going to be that forever now. That's how I'm going to paint leather.
You say that about recipes, but I think like to summarize with that as well, I think like if you've always highlighted your leather with X color, try a different color. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like I'm not saying like put purple on your brown or that's what I'm saying. Like, why not? Choose. I mean, you can do. Yeah, but like just choose maybe a different tone that you would normally highlight it with, or maybe do like your or add a few more colors or tones. Ultimately, like weathering and stuff like that on those type of materials, it's about variance, and the variance it kind of conveys to like different force and different impacts and different ways that damage or wear has accumulated on that material, whether it's metal, steel, wood, whatever. So variance of tones. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but how many times have you seen a van that's like knocked a bollard and the yellow paint from the bollard is like scraped on the side of the van? All these kind of little things, like it adds interest onto that object, and it adds to you're ultimately
storytelling. Isn't it? That's what we're getting at, I suppose.
The material, and that is a lovely way to kind of like to kind of summarize all this stuff that we're going into, whether it's taking reference, becoming painting paparazzi, all this kind of stuff. Like think that like you're ultimately trying to immerse that miniature not only into the environment that it's within, but also immerse that miniature in the things that it's made of.
Yeah.
And like, I was very guilty for a very long time of having severance between the environment and the world and the materials, and I'm just painting this color on this model and just doing this and getting it done. And if you're painting for gaming, you're just trying to get stuff. But if you are really, really painterly and you are really, really wanting to get as much out of your painting, I think this kind of stuff is integral to push yourself further onwards as a painter.
It's definitely worth thinking about, even sort of on a low key level to start with.
Yeah.
Will you melt your brain?
Yeah. 1,000,000%. Yeah.
How do we actually put this into practice? I mean, like, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And if you think about a model that's covered in 50 odd different types of surfaces and materials and things, I'm at leather. That's where I am at the minute. I'm at leather. So like, putting these things into practice, I mean, how do you even think about starting all this?
I wouldn't, like I've just said about go out and go crazy taking photos, and that's all well and good taking all those photos, but I think you should stay in the lane of one thing to start off with, and go light leather and go cool. I'm gonna look at as much leather as I physically can, both in the real world, online, all this kind of stuff, and I'm gonna basically get my mind and eye attuned to the way that weathering happens on it, or the wear happens on it, or the colors, or even the texture that maybe is on the surface, and like master painting leather as close as possible to real leather. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's funny because when I'm painting leather and things, I do often think about where the models are. Yeah. Because I think, well, space cows aren't going to exist forever, are they? So, I mean, where are they getting this leather? What animals are they using for this leather?
Yeah, that's a great thought. Yeah.
All these animals are going to have like a different texture to them, a different color variances and things like that. So, I mean, in my mind, it's some weird kind of, space moose or whatever.
I think they're called groks, aren't I? think
they're not everywhere, are they?
No,
I mean, the galaxy is a big place.
Yeah,
so
true, yeah.
All I'm thinking of is not one little shop, back on Terra, just knocking out holsters or whatever, and shipping them out at Amazon style next day. So I would assume that they're just, getting leather from whatever creatures are around. Yeah, totally. And that is being processed. Mind you, by then, I would assume it is.
Could even be like synthetic maybe. Yeah. But the thing is, and that's the other good thing to talk about, is like you in our real world where there's not Tyranids. Yeah. We have fake leather here, and that wears very differently to real leather. Yeah. It's obviously not leather. Like, so I think stuff like that is really important, and like you're thinking about your painting in a really creative way. So like, for example, like don't forget that, like, we say leather as a governing term, but like you've got leather that's made out of crocodile stuff, for example, like crocodile skin. You've got you could have a guard regiment and all their webbing and materials is made out of a leather that has a certain type of you can 100% do that. It could be
a black leather, it could be a brown leather, it could be totally. A green. I don't know where you go get green leathers. It must be somewhere.
You can literally add so much variance and interest to your miniatures by just thinking about that material and going, do you know what? For this army, I'm going to do them. Not only they've been tanned or dyed a different color, but also at the same time, I'm going to put this type of texture on it, or this type of pattern on it, or that it looks like this. Yeah. And that in itself will add so much. But in answer to your question, I think in a long-winded answer, like I would, for someone new, really trying to add this immersion onto their miniatures and add a lot of interest onto them, I would really start approaching one specific thing and almost do like a case study on, like, right, I really want to make my leather look more realistic. I'm going to look at as much leather as possible, as in real life leather that's worn, and I'm going to try and paint what I see and try and paint that as close as possible. And then once you get really happy with what you're doing, then go on to the next thing and go, do you know what? Like, my rust and my metal, I'm not really good at like doing that, or the shapes that are on there, or the colors and tones. So when I'm out and about, I'm going to consciously look for things that are rusty, and I'm just going to start taking photos on it. It's like, just to add into that, it's like when you start doing streaks on stuff like that. Yeah. What you'll commonly see with streaks is that they're all perfectly vertical, and that's because of gravity. Yeah. But I see it so many times where potentially they're off center and stuff like that, and it loses its realism, because unless the tank's parked on a hill or the gravity's off on the world, the streak wouldn't be diagonal. Do you know what I mean? So like, it teaches you visual identifiers that basically then when you're painting, you know to yourself, well, I have to paint this streak dead straight and vertical, because if I don't, then it doesn't sell that it's running from the thing. Does that make sense? So doing individual case studies on all these different things, spending some time painting some cloth, spending some time looking at real cloth and trying to paint what you see, spending some time to do metals or verdigris or all these things, that is the way that you then start linking the visual and your understanding of what it looks like or how it behaves to what you then try and convey on the miniature. And I think that's the best approach. Leather's a great way to start as well, because it's quite a forgiving material when it comes to the way that it wears and all that kind of stuff.
Helps you with this. I know we haven't spoken about it at all in this, but skin. Yeah. Skin is another thing that I find quite difficult to convey. And I think a lot of other people do. But obviously, it's quite a focal point of the miniature as well, isn't it? So I think, but I mean, there's plenty of reference online for looking at, facial features.
100%.
And, all these different things.
I think
faces are all often quite interesting as well. Quite really interesting things.
They are, because of all the shapes that are on them, and obviously the way that light interplays with those shapes, all those kind of things. But like again, just to say, if you've again, I just want to caveat, there's nothing wrong with just painting it a solid color and shading it and then doing a quick highlight.
Still good.
There's nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever. I think again, like with painting skin, it's stuff like just like. That way of painting it is well and good and is fine, but like if those people were real, they wouldn't be alive because their recesses are so deep. Like it wouldn't be right. You know what I mean? So like I find that like when you start looking at, especially at black and white photography, I know real life reference. I'm not saying go around and start taking photos of people, but like real life photography of like if you use Google image search like black and white photography, you'll see how light interplays with like the facial structure and how soft the shadows are and how like. Typically, if you're a lot older, like, your skin's maybe a bit not got the elasticity that it has in youth, you'll find that it pulls taut to like the skeletal structure quite more. And you'll find that certain areas and wrinkles and this kind of stuff on certain areas of the skin, when light hits it, the shadows are way more intense, but they're not like stark.
You can see someone's skull through
I mean, that's pretty severe. It sounds like something from Resident Evil, but what I'm saying is that like the moment you start looking at stuff like that and actually looking at how soft highlighting and shading is on flesh, that will transform your miniature painting on painting skin and stuff like that. Like stuff like, unless you're being really kind of like flamboyant and being over exaggerated and creating a really like sort of like impactful piece that you want that high contrast on, that's fine. But if you're trying to emulate skin as close as possible, then contrast and shadow on there is not as stark or as harsh as you might perceive on the way you've painted it previously. That's exactly the same. You should do individual little case studies on all these different things that you paint that are real materials and try and
I suppose naturally they'll all come together.
Of course they will,
Of
course they will, 100%. Yeah. So I think in summary, if you've not thought about about these things, I think that's something that you should maybe be a bit more open to and actually start taking stuff. Channel your inner painting paparazzi.
And maybe like this is something I do. Is like if I think, I want to paint that shoulder pad or whatever it is I'm painting, I'll go to someone who's already painted it. Yeah. And then I'll go, that's how I do it.
Yeah. So that also helps as well. But that's what I want to talk about this week. I thought it'd be quite an interesting topic and just really help you to bring your models a bit more to life and add a bit more interest and interest to them. So massive thank you for watching this week's episode of Paint Perspective. I hope that's been really helpful for you. We're now going to jump into the after show where we're going to be talking about some of our first models and mistakes that we made and things that we learned very early on. So if you're interested in watching that, then the link to join us on Patreon will be found in the description of this video. While you're checking that out on our Patreon, you get access to hundreds of PDF tutorials and there's obviously video tutorials on there as well. We've got an RSS feed. We've got all the previous after show episodes of Paint Perspective. We've got lots of other member benefits that are on there, including Critique Clinic, where you get model feedback in an opinionated and a factual basis. And also you get access to like our hobby hangouts and things like that. So I do hope that you can join us on Patreon and we're going to dive now into the after show. Thanks for watching and we'll see you very soon on the next episode of Paint Perspective.
The way I sold it to my friend was it's like chess club that we all went to, but in space. So we'll have in space.
What was the biggest mistake you made when you were a kid then, Paul, on your models?
Oh, the models, okay. Sure.
Oh no, not in general in
general.
life. Picture if you could go back now and like there's one model that you were like you'd love to like pull it from your past and paint it now. What would you have done? Would it be an Airfix or would it be Warhammer?